what the fuck happened to you today?
This is what happens when you do construction all day and then right off the couch you try to send your project without warming up and you've never actually tried it before.
Did you hurt yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, my LCL tried blowing out on me.
Did it though, or is it just hurting?
Can you hear this? You ready? Oh, hold on, my hands are greasy. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Well, that sound.
Yeah.
That's what my LCL did.
Oh yeah.
So while I was pulling, all of a sudden, I had put your heel on your knee as if you're like sitting in a chair, and I had my heel like in a pocket in a Waco, and I was levering off of it while reaching up, and my LCL just made this fucking popping noise and sounded like a hold broke. And I dropped onto the rope, but it just was like instant pain, and I just was like,
Doesn't sound good, man.
No, but you know what I ended up doing? Taking a Norco, getting a shot of ibuprofen, and I went to work for 6 hours.
That's good. I think that's what 1 in 4 doctors recommend.
Yeah.
It's like
That's the trick.
Doc, I'm gonna need some fentanyl and some extra strength ibuprofen. Get me back on the job site ASAP.
Yeah.
You're like
It's
an
like a high school
orthopedic
football player
surgeon.
move.
Yeah, exactly. You're
Get
like an
back out there.
orthopedic's nightmare, literally.
Totally. And then I went into the orthopedic today, and I told him how I demanded the nurse, because I woke the nurse up at the ER at 6 a.m. yesterday, and he's like, "This is life-threatening stuff. Like, you can't be walking in here." I'm like, "Buddy, this is what you're gonna do." And so I told my my doctor, and he's like, "Well, you did a good job because you forced the doctor to write you a referral to come here." And she's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, if it's blown out, I need you to cut it and stitch it. We got like 6 days before this thing is non-repairable." And she's like, "Jesus, you did your research." I'm like, yeah, it's, I got like 6 cords of firewood to chop. Let's get this done. So it's kind of gnarly.
Did they scan it or anything? Like, is it torn? It sounds like it's torn.
They did x-rays. They checked it out. I'll go into the MRI on Monday. But what's even cooler, check this out. The orthopedist. So I went to Bishop, about an hour away from me. And they were like, "So is there anything else like wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "I got this chronic foot pain from climbing for 20 years. And she's like, "Let's put you in the x-ray machine." I'm like, "Are you shitting me? I've been dealing with chronic foot pain for like 4 years from hitting the deck while soloing or bouldering, jumping from rock to rock." And she's like, "All right, I got you an appointment set up on Sunday with the foot doctor." I'm like, "You're kidding me." And so, yeah, we're going to get all fixed up before South America. I'm stoked.
What did the x-ray show? Like, was it like a broken bone? Like
on my feet?
Ligaments, really? Yeah.
You have these bones. So if you go into your, what do we call it? Behind your big toe, the ball of your foot. Behind the ball of your foot, you have these 2 bones called the sesamoids. And they're these 2 little bones that your tendons for your big toe run under or above or on. And my theory is the sesamoids were broken from impact. And once she looked into it, she's like, "They're not broken, but they're displaced." And I was like, but it's both feet. So like hiking 20 miles in South America with these giant bags to big walls was like, my partners be like, "How you doing, Myles?" I'm like sitting there gritting my teeth being like, "Doing great." Like, yeah, let's rock and roll. But in reality, my feet were just like, fuck.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of bite through it and go. But no, I'm stoked. They're going to fix me up. The LCL, to be honest, we'll see. We'll see what's up. But I've never heard a noise like that unless I break bones. And I was like, that's terrible. But, before this, I was wheelbarrowing mulch and firewood around my yard. So it can't be that bad. Hurt like a motherfucker. But, yeah.
Dude, Godspeed,
totally
my
bitching.
friend. I wish you all the best.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be fucking exciting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
For a second there, I thought
totally
you were
thought you just fully
going
stripped
skins.
into like
Oh,
your
it's the
shirt.
shirt.
You're just like, it's gonna like gorilla pound his chest and just like, I'm ready to
Oh.
be interviewed.
Yeah, let's do this.
I think this is probably a pretty good place to like, start transitioning a little. Is like, you know, who are you, Myles? Like maybe if you can kind of like go back a little bit and just give us a little bit of like a history of like, how did you find climbing?
I found climbing because my parents used to go to Yosemite all the time when I was a little kid, but no one in my family climbs. I was adopted into the family when I was about 4 years old. And so as far as like passions, definitely no one has the similar taste for the great outdoors as I do. So they took me to Yosemite. My dad took me to El Cap Meadow at nighttime, and essentially I got to see people sleeping on El Capitan. And I was like, well, I want to do that. And so I was probably like 12 at the time, and then immediately started like getting pictures off of crappy internet photos or whatever I could find in magazines. And then I built a portaledge out of junk, and essentially was like, yeah, we're gonna sleep on a wall. My dad was like, you're like 15. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna try it out. And so the first time I ever slept in a portaledge was actually like hanging on the drywall in my closet as a kid.
Hell yeah.
But
Wow.
my dad sold search and rescue equipment because he was a salesman, and so he had some weird stuff. But by it being weird stuff, I then started stealing that stuff, and then I stole my mom's sewing machine and started turning it into like haul bags and that kind of things, and started using them. And by the age of 19, I had moved to Yosemite and was actually using those things that I had built when I was a little kid with the idea. So when I was very young, I was very much aware that this is what I was going to do. And my parents actually let me go for it. They were really just like, my dad never yelled at me for dipping into the garage and taking things that, were showpieces to try to sell. And my mom never yelled at me for stealing the sewing machine. And so that kind of actually carried on for quite a while, making stuff for climbing just because I was pretty bare bones. And eventually I was kicked out of Yosemite for inciting a riot with the DNC employees. I lived there I made it 11 months, and I convinced a bunch of people to flip the vending machines for me so I could get candy bars to go up on El Capitan. And somebody snitched. When I grew up, snitches get stitches, but somebody snitched on me, and it didn't take too long for them to find me. And persona non grata me, which means you're not welcome in Latin. You're not welcome here. And so I was kicked out of Yosemite National Park for 6 years, which was like, that's every climber's dream, right? Yosemite's awesome. And all of a sudden I'm being escorted out the gates for inciting a riot, which is like, did I incite a riot, or did I just entertain the idea of flipping vending machines and these people did it for me?
Yeah, you're an innocent man, clearly.
Totally. Except the haul bag full of candy bars at the base of the cap.
Oh, and
Yeah.
didn't a bear? What about the bear?
We were hauling on the first pitch on Magic Mushroom, and this bear leapt onto the haul bags and would not release it. He was so jacked on the amount of candy that was in there that it was like we were hauling the bear up the wall while he was like feverishly like clawing the haul bag that I sewed when I was like 15 fucking years old. And I'm just like, let go of my fucking bag, bear. which is hilarious because I remember Jackson Minton at the time, one of my co-workers in the valley. He didn't have a portaledge. I had my childhood portaledge I built. So he came across this lawn chair that like a beach chair that folded 3 ways, like the metal ones that ratchet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so we strapped it up with cord, and that was his portaledge on Magic Mushroom. And anytime he mouthed off to me, I would ratchet up his head and like click it into position. So he'd have to get out of the portal edge, click it all the way down, and then fold it back straight. It was, he hated me. Needless to say, Magic Mushroom didn't work out too well for us.
Yeah, I've got a map of El Cap behind me, and Magic Mushroom looks like a very involved endeavor.
Oh, it's gnarly, dude.
Yeah.
we were so in over our heads. That was probably like we were just dumb kids with too much testosterone and bullshit equipment. But regardless, that operation ended up getting me kicked out of Yosemite for 6 years. But I'm allowed back in. But it was one of those times of my life. If it didn't happen, if that did not happen, I would have not have found Lone Pine. I lived in a campground. I've been here for 17 years. I lived in a campground off the grid for 7 years in Tuttle Creek Campground with no running water or electricity. I moved here in a Volkswagen 1971 Super Beetle that I built as my climbing rig. The whole thing converted into a camper. And so it was kind of like sleeping in a casket, which is kind of strange. But it was like my first version of a camper van was a 71 Super Beetle that I bought when I was in the 8th grade. And totally restored it, rebuilt it, moved here in it. And then slowly but surely got a van, like a creepy Chevy van.
Like an Astro van?
No, like a big old Chevy,
like a child molester white van.
Yeah, the Chester van.
Chester van.
So I was stoked because I made some money. Like, Volkswagen, living in a Volkswagen buggy is terrible, right? So I was like, all right. So my boss at the time, the owner of the climbing shop here, was like, Myles, we got to get you out of the Volkswagen into a van. I'm like, all right, yeah. And so she fronted the money and helped me out. And we end up getting the van, but it turns out it's stolen.
Oh my God.
So like me getting this thing registered is like a nightmare. So I'm like gonna light the van on fire because it's like, I can't move it, I can't drive it. And then I actually taken my good buddy. I'm like, hey Neil, you want a van? He's like, yeah. How much? I'm like, $300. And he's like, sweet, here's $300. I'm like, it's stolen. It's your problem now. And then I moved into a pop top, like one of those Palomino pop top camper things, that go out on the sides like a cloth camper. And that kept getting blown out in the desert wind, and then eventually got a hard shell camper. And once I had a hard shell camper, life started getting a little easier, but it's like a 1950s camper. And this is all campground living. So I got a permit that allowed me to sleep in the campground here for 8 months for $300. It was called an LTVA, a long-term visitor area. And I never had to move sites. I kind of got to be the king of Tuttle Creek. And for 7 years, I lived off the grid. I would bathe in the creek every day and go to work and try to not look homeless. And then those 4 months that I wasn't living in the campground, I either traveled the world or climbed in the U.S. And then eventually ended up buying a house and starting my contracting business. And from there, life has been better, which one would think, taking on all that house stuff, kind of a pain in the ass.
So Myles, when we had initially talked, because we had tried to do a recording last week, you had mentioned that like you had saw the people up on El Cap and you were inspired by that. I think you also had mentioned that the allure of like establishing first ascents, establishing your name in the world of climbing was something that appealed to you in the beginning. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
So, like the story you just told in the progression, it shows a level of dedication to something bigger. Because I would, to a lot of people, I'm sure, hear that story and like it captures the essence of adventure and the capture, but I think it captures the dedication to something bigger more than anything else. And I think a lot of us, when we start getting into climbing, it's very easy for us to be like, oh yeah, first ascents, like that's what I want to do. Like I want to put my name in the world. But it's like this fleeting emotion or this thing that we like talk about. And it's like this thing that feels good. But we never actually put any action to it. So like, why are you different? Like, what do you see as being the deciding factor between it just being like this pipe dream or this good idea versus like the level of dedication that you've made towards establishing your name in this world of climbing in your own way?
I would say moving to Lone Pine specifically and climbing my brains out here and then becoming well aware of the potential of what could be done, but also just me having a naturally creative type mind. Like, I'm very good with my hands. I can fix and build almost anything. So I just have that concept of like idle hands is the devil's playground. And when it comes to climbing these routes, it's one of the hardest things I've ever have to do. You know, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. So going out and repeating a route, yes, can be difficult, but going out and casting yourself into the abyss without knowing if the next 6 feet are going to go and you're going to take a 30-footer header is really exciting. And it's kind of this idea of dancing with the devil, but dancing with the devil in control. And so that excites me with the idea of, will it go? Or, you know, do I go left? Do I go right? Did I miss the turn, 20 feet below? Because the idea is always to set a free route. And so I have something in me that's very like, maybe it's because I've been doing it for so long, but I can sit in a parking lot and stare at a cliff or at a trail and pick an amazing line just through a pair of binos because I know what I'm looking at because I've done so many of them. And that for me is a thrill. And I don't really get scared by the size of something. It's not like I walk up to, for instance, like the North Tower in Patagonia. When I walked up to that was one of those situations where it was like, no, I'm here to climb this. And everybody had given me fair warning how dangerous the wall was. And I could give in 2 shits what they told me. And that's simply because it's like, I know it's going to be scary and that's what I enjoy out of it. But the idea is to walk away from it, creating a really good line. And when I say creating, you're not altering anything. It's just the idea of like connecting all the dots and the pieces to me is a really artistic form. And I don't climb very hard. And that's something that, is kind of goofy to hear. But the reality is it's like, I would say I'm a really solid 11C climber. I definitely can free climb 12A, maybe not on site, but I can ground up a 12A with no hooks, no problem. And there's something a little different about that. And this little like gorilla comes out when it's that go time of like, hold on. And so I get a really big kick out of that. But when I go out and do these routes, by no means am I trying to like establish a really hard 512 or 513. I'm really actually just trying to put something together that would be aesthetically pleasing. Because to me, it's kind of like a dance up there, right? You want it to feel good, flow good. And so that's really what I seek. But a lot of it has to do with I'm not scared of it just because I've been doing it for so long. And I have been in some pretty hairy situations doing this where it's like my body reacts incredibly differently, I think, than most people. I have a really good sense of when shit goes south, I deal very well with what do we call that? Correct decisions or patience. And kind of get a kick out of it. When the mountain tries killing you, you gotta fight back.
How aware in the climbing community do you feel that your first ascents and your climbing accomplishments are like? How aware is the climbing community of these? Do you not care, or kind of where's your mentality in terms of publicizing these things that we're going to talk about?
Well, I've always when I was younger, I wanted to be a professional athlete. That was one of my things. I realized that was something that I wanted to accomplish. And then there was a period of my life where, I started getting sponsors and I was really excited about it. It was cool. but I also started having a really hard time, as you know, just technologically, the idea of kind of putting it out there and, either pictures or videos. And I have a hard time kind of with this clout, especially this day and age, that people search for. And maybe I don't really talk too much about my climbing, just simply because I myself, I don't think I'm that great of a climber. I just said 11C and 12A, that's, to me, that's a consistent thing, but I can climb the 11C and the 12A for 30 pitches over 20 days. It's a little different beast, but no, I don't think a lot of people actually know too much about the routes that I've done. I think they hear things. I also think sometimes people expect me to be a much stronger climber than I am, just because maybe the stories that they've heard, but I don't really talk a whole lot about the climbing unless I'm approached or asked about it. Just simply because in my mind, it's this idea that the adventure isn't lost. And I feel like when you start really talking about how amazing something was, it's like, well, what'd you do it for? Did you do it for yourself, or did you do it because you want somebody else to think that you're amazing? And so that's something that I've actually struggled with. And I have my personal reasons, like my deep reasons, where I maybe don't talk as much about it. And I think a lot of it maybe is also because I got to experience the sponsorship thing when I was younger, and I probably punted those opportunities just because A, I was a little more broke, and B, just kind of doing it for myself. And I'd say currently, I'm probably even a little more quiet about it, just because, I have a good job. I run my own business. So if I need to buy things, I can buy them. I do have friends in the industries that will help me out with certain things, but, I get discounts at the local shops. But I have absolutely no problem funding my own expeditions these days, and not hoping that I'm going to get a grant or a sponsorship, just simply because, I got two hands that can make the money to do it. But I definitely struggle with the modern day spray, I would call it, because you almost need to wear a Gore-Tex jacket these days, because that spray is heavy duty, which is fine, which is totally cool. And I love reading about it, but I definitely do not talk too much about my first ascents, which is too bad, because, I put in all this work to do them. And, I would love for you and Max to come and repeat some of these routes. And, I got a binder full of topos of grade 5s and grade 6s that nobody knows about. And it's kind of dumb, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, with the little bit amount of time that we've interacted and stuff, I'm already blown away and impressed with the number of first ascents that you've even shared with us. And I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface. And I think that, with the spray and with the tension of professional athletes and everything, I think it's just a reiteration of kind of what this podcast is all about. It's like sharing the stories of people like you. Exactly. And, again, I'm just psyched you're on the show, and I'm psyched to share these stories, and that you're willing to come on the show and talk about them. That being said, I think it's a good opportunity to kind of start to jump into, some of these stories you have in the holster. I think that,
yeah. What do you want to hear?
So if we're talking like climbing adventures, like, I don't even know, like, where's a good place to start, Myles? Like, chronologically, like, what was some of like the most major or exciting things like that you think we should jump into?
Well, I would start the Mount Whitney cert here in Lone Pine. That's pretty much the reason why I moved here. And then from there, what I learned there, goes further into the reaches of like South America, just because this is like my training ground and stomping ground. So the you have Whitney Portal, which is essentially a forgotten Yosemite Valley. I don't know why people don't climb there. It's got anywhere from easily 15 to 1,800 foot walls to 1,000 foot walls. Most grade 4s. There's a couple of grade 5s that I've established out there, which are literally 15 minutes from the parking lot. Most people walk right by Whitney Portal to go climb the east face or the east buttress or Whitney or Mithril, Dihedral on Mount Russell or Fishhook, which I totally understand because those are fabulous routes, but they walk past these pristine buttresses, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth. And that all began, what really opened my eyes was, I don't know if any of these names ring a bell, but I moved here, didn't have a climbing partner. I was working at the climbing shop, and the owner, Kesley Lund, lined me up a climbing date. She's like, hey, you're going to go up to Whitney Portal and you're going to go climb with these guys. And I was like, okay. And all of a sudden I'm lined up with Daryl Hensel, Johnny Woodward, Kevin Powell, Kevin Daniels, Mike Waugh, and I think there was maybe one other one, I can't remember. And these are like, Kevin Daniels owns Fix Hardware in North America. Daryl Hensel is one of the hardest slab climbers in the world. Kevin Powell was Daryl Hensel's partner when they were kids developing Whitney Portal. And Mike Waugh is just your classic Yosemite crusher. And these are all these old men. And here I am hooked up with these guys, and they just were like, the world is your oyster, steal its pearl. Like, welcome to Lone Pine. And so it all started in Whitney Portal. And then shortly after that, I started marching my way up to the high country and established my second grade 5 since I had been there at that time. And that was on Keeler Needle, where I lived on the wall for 10 days, ground up capsule style, establishing the second free route on Keeler Needle at 14,000 feet. And that was 512, which has been repeated a few times, but that was real low budget at the time. I was taking bed frames out of the dumpster in the dump in Lone Pine and hacksawing them in my campground and making 1/4-inch bolt hangers and, with a hand drill drilling out. So I was making the hangers for that route. And my partner and I were up there for 10 days, free climbing every pitch ground up and establishing it all by hand, drilling 1/4-inch hand drilling bolts, which I've gotten a lot of flack for, especially on that route, because that route was established when I was in my 20s. So it's got a lot of balls to it. It's got some teeth. It's pretty ballsy for sure. Big run outs, like one pitch is called the upside down screamer traverse. And at that time I had a really hardcore ethics, and we intersected an A3 route, and I really didn't want to add bolts on his A3 hooking pitch. So the upside down screamer traverse was created on that. And I've even had friends that went up there and they got to that section, they were like, fuck this, and repelled and pendulumed way right to bypass it, because they were like, fuck you. And so there's a lot of button heads that are like keyhole hangers. So you got to bring like your own fucking hangers, which is ridiculous. I think I placed more pitons on that route than I did bolts. And so I think, like, I can't remember the counts in the American Alpine Journal, but it's something silly. It's like 12 pitons and like 8 bolts or 10 bolts on a 2,000 foot face at 14,000 feet. But that was 10 days, man, on that. Totally capsule style, freeing the route completely, which was awesome.
Did each of you free it, or did you guys?
No, we always team freed. My partner at the time was Amy Ness, and her and I always not team freed. I take that back. We always freed every pitch together.
So each person freed each pitch.
Yeah, which I have a hard time with. I don't really understand the team free. That's an interesting thing for me.
Again, just to clarify, team free means that together as a whole you free the route.
Exactly, but it means if I take pitch 10, you don't have to free pitch 10. Your mission is to free like pitch 12 or 13.
Correct.
So pitch 10 is my crux pitch, whereas my code of ethics is like, no, we free the whole goddamn thing together.
Yeah. So I go up, I free it, I go back down, and then you free it.
No. Just not in that sense. That's extreme, which would be awesome.
Clean
but
without
if
falling
you
is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole team climbing it free without falling. So if you lead it, I follow it as well, clean.
Okay.
Yeah. But the team free concept to me is one of those things I don't fully understand because, you want to climb all the pitches, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the thing? But prior to Keeler Needle, the first route actually I was mistaken. I thought Keeler Needle was the first one. The first route I had done was Day Needle. And Day Needle's to the left of Keeler. So it goes Day Needle, Keeler Needle, Mount Whitney. And Day Needle I lived on for 7 days, pioneering every pitch on that. And that route to this day is kind of my like, that one's badass. That one's like, that's the fucking Hulk at 14,000 feet. That is,
wow.
I've kept that one quiet. I've freed every pitch and retroed it. So it's actually, it's not like bare bones, 1/4-inch hanger bullshit. I've like fixed it up over time as, I got older and acquired more money and got a real job. I've snuck up there and I've been on that route quite a few times. And I'll tell you what, that one is sick. But I keep that topo hidden. The topo that's out there right now is one of those things that it's like, makes it look like it's like A2, A3, my original topo. And it's like, I have freed every pitch except this massive route. And that's actually a goal for this year is to establish essentially the third grade 5 free route for me up there. And Day Needle was absolutely gnarly actually. When I had established that, we had no portaledge, we had no stove. We were eating peanut butter sandwiches and sleeping on ledges that were like probably 2 feet by 4 feet wide, the two of us, and just, absolute hell on earth. It was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. Drill bits were breaking while I was drilling the 1/4-inch. It was gnarly, man. There's probably so many drill bits at the base of that wall. But originally it was like 511 A0, and then just over the years, I've corrected the route and just gotten stronger and better. But that in my mind is hands down one of I think the coolest routes I've ever put up. It's got a lot of really neat flavor and amazing rock on it that you're just like, like that's one of those things. The people should probably know about that one too. They know about Blood of the Monkey on Keeler Needle.
Is that what it's called?
And then there's Blood of the Monkey on Keeler, and then BCB on the Prow, which is a play on words because at the time I was a burger flipper at Whitney Portal when I was younger. And so the tickets would come in and it was bacon cheeseburger, BCB.
Yeah.
And so I cooked a lot of bacon cheeseburgers. But at the time we had this kind of like clique going called Backcountry Banditos. And so it was kind of the idea of like Backcountry Banditos on the Prow. But really cool route. I think online you can find the topo. I'm sure people would enjoy seeing the free variation and what's happened to it because it's really, really cool.
What does it go
so
at
that's
free?
That's two. It almost goes free. I bet you I could probably free the roof at like 12C to 13A. I bet, but I've never climbed 513 because I'm lazy. But I bet you I could. And that's the only reason why I haven't talked about it. So now people know about it. They're going to be like, oh, there's a route that we go free one pitch of, huh? But then, so that's 2 grade 5s, both of which Day Needle right now is 512 A0 or C1. We call it C1 because the roof is C1able. Those are both grade 5s, and then Keeler's a grade 5, 512. And then Mount Whitney took 26 days to pioneer a route that I think probably only a handful of people actually know about because I never published it. And that is King Pile. And I think that's like 18 pitches, 12B. And that was also done ground up, but I sieged that one. Just because Mount Whitney's kind of a pile of shit. And so I kind of figured it was going to take a lot of cleaning, a lot of patience on it. And since I already had a pile of rope out there from a decade of climbing in the cirque, I might as well string it out. But that route itself, actually, my best friend Neil, whose house I'm doing this podcast in right now, that route sent him into retirement because a football-sized rock came off and almost took him out. He looked up at me, is like, fuck this, I'm done. But being my best friend, he sat in a cave at the base of the wall for the next 6 hours while I rained down, purposely trying to hit him at this point because he's just like sitting down there. I could see his head poke out from like, I'm up like 1,800 feet on the wall, and I could see his head and just like throw a rock down and see if I can kill him. Just because it's like, he's down there for a reason to enjoy the show. So we had a lot of fun establishing that route. That was fun. But that route,
air quotes,
yeah. Yeah, he's like, if you're choosing retirement, I'm going to force you into retirement.
He did not walk away from the base. And when I got back down after that days of work, man, he was still glowing. He was like, man, that was wild. Because it's like just a meteor shower coming down around the cave that he's tucked into.
Just watching the rocks rain over, and you're like,
just
that's crazy.
I could see really him cool, when we were.
Originally, I was like, "You fucking asshole," and then I was like, "No, that's actually kind of cool. If you were doing that of your own volition, yeah."
Oh, absolutely. like he'd be laying on top of the cave on the rock watching, and then all I'd have to yell is rock, and you could see this little ant figure run into his like barricade, and be tucked in there, be like, "My boy's up there kicking ass."
Wow,
but the thing about that cirque is they're giant, they're big, they're committing. It's a miniature Patagonia up there. It's like being on the moon too. It's kind of desolate, man. It's like, you're pretty high up. It's not like, it's a big wall at 14,000 feet with nothing except rock. So it has a different feeling. But for me, it was really important to establish 3 huge routes up there, and no one else has that actually, which is a lot of fun. I have Day Needle, Keeler, Mount Whitney. Those are my babies, and I probably established easily anywhere from 95 to 98% of every single pitch ground up. Wow. And then my partner would free climb or pick and choose which pitches after they were established that they wanted. So it was awesome. But King Pile has been repeated twice by me, and then once by Tyler Carro and Peter.
Yeah.
I can't remember Peter's last name.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it sounded like it kind of stymied them, which was cool, which you always want to hear. You don't want somebody to be like, "Oh yeah, we smoked your route." You're like, "Fuck, that took me 26 days to establish. What do you mean
Yeah.
Like, Jesus." And so talking with them afterwards, they found me because I run my business at Whitney Portal, where I maintain 26 cabins up there for 8 months. They found me on one of my job sites, and they just were like, "Why haven't you told anybody about this route?" I was like, "Well, I just whatever, did it for myself." And they're like, "This is a North American classic. This is absolutely ridiculous that no one knows about this." They're like, "You should put the topo online." I'm like, "Yeah, I could." And I honestly, I really don't know why I haven't.
I think you're allergic to technology.
Well, we know that based upon this.
We'll give you a couple benefit drills and get you to sit down at like the computer for a day and like put some topos up.
You know what my current climbing partner said, which I thought like kind of nailed it. My partner Trevor Athens, he what did he say? He said, if you find the topo through the underground, you're worthy enough to get on the route. And, I thought that was kind of a cool statement, just because, there is an underground. Like, Tyler's got a topo. Like, somebody's going to reach out to that guy and be like, hey, let me get that topo. And then, it will carry on. Or somebody may come into my house and be looking through my black book and take a picture of it, which is fine.
Yeah, did you just like invite the public into your house to like steal your secret book? He's like sharpening a knife in the background as he's like saying that.
There's definitely a rather large black book of this area for sure. But so that's just like a few routes in the Whitney Cirque. But there's also I took it to South America, and that's when shit started to get real big. And those mountains down there want to kill you more than the Sierras do, to be honest. You guys want to hear something about that?
Yeah.
Let's do it.